and we'll be focusing today on the literacy passport. So yeah, before we sort of delve straight into the literacy passport and what that includes, I want to give you a bit of background about us as a company and really what sort of led us to creating such resources as the literacy passport. So Scanning Pens, some of you may know us, some of you may be hearing from us for the first time, but we've been providing reading aids to people of all ages across the world since 2004. And within really just the last few years, I guess, we've really channeled a lot of our focus into the primary education phase. Why have we done this? Well, we believe firmly, really, that the earlier we can implement support strategies, especially assistive technology support strategies, the better that the students will benefit from those and the stronger their learning outcomes will be going forward. Something we've sort of have a real strong company ethos on is early implementation and also, you know, really improving the literacy journey for all, and that is key to us as a company. So when working with primary schools, we really knew that there are a number of things that we could do that would assist further than just the use of a scanning pen in the classroom. And we really sort of took a lot of time to think about those as a company and how we could assist further. So firstly, what we did is we created a number of literacy activities that were there really to ensure the implementation of a scanning pen into a student's normal way of working was, you know, as easy and as seamless and as engaging as possible. Secondly, we identified that it would be extremely beneficial to provide support strategies, reading support strategies, and documents that would really help to ensure that we're able to track the progress of a student and ensure that the support is really working for that student. We also felt that it would be key to provide transition information so that as a student moves through the key stages, their support strategy stays as part of their support strategy. So the need for these additional resources was identified by our education team. The team's led by Julia, who joins us today. So we are really lucky to have Julia with us. So thanks again, Julia, for joining us today. Julia created the Literacy Passport, and she'll delve into some of its contents for us today and be around following the session to answer any questions that you may have. Of course, there is a chat pod there, so touching on things, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. Now, before I just change our slides, so before Julia takes us through some of the documentation that's included in the Literacy Passport, I think it's important for us to really, I guess, touch on the literacy challenge that faces you guys every day in the classroom. You know, as I'm sure you're all aware, literacy, you know, encompasses the skills of reading, writing, listening, and communicating. And with it being such a high and key skill, the bar is set extremely high for you guys as teachers to, you know, not only improve but accelerate reading ability. And as that bar is set so high, you know, with it the expected reading age really matches, or I guess it's fair to say exceeds, students' chronological age, and that's irrespective to, you know, their learning needs, their background, or even their starting point in education. You know, we're seeing a lot more students coming into the English education system at different times, or they may have had a lot of different sort of starts to life and come from different walks of life, but the expected reading age is the same for all as we progress through the key stages. You know, you only have to look at the government SATs data from 2019 that shows us that 73% of students achieve the standard expected reading age when moving on into secondary school, but that leaves us with 1 in 4 students who, you know, are going to struggle to access age-related reading material as they go into secondary school. And if we really sort of level with ourselves about that, you know, students entering secondary education with an existing reading gap, you know, those students who didn't embed phonics and are struggling to sort of catch up, you know, they're entering the secondary phase without recognition, without any intervention in place, and without that ongoing reading support strategy. Something that I guess for us as a literacy company really sort of hits home, if I'm being honest. So, you know, these are the reasons that we're really sort of pushing the Literacy Passport in a way that we can help to support you guys, support your students. Now, entering the secondary education phase with a reading gap is a problem in itself. But again, if we're being honest with ourselves, that gap is likely to widen without support, you know, due to age-related materials being there for the students to access. You know, as they move on into the secondary education phase, they're expected to be able to access text at a certain level, and if they're already unable to access that text and that text progresses across over the years and years, that gap is just likely to widen. And you know, it really can lead to a decrease in well-being, confidence. You know, reading anxieties can increase, and then all these sorts of things we really want to alleviate and we don't want to see. You know, and again, one other point that we'll finish on with this is that many of these students that are transitioning without having met the expected reading age are doing so with unidentified reading needs. You know, they're not the students that have already got that support in place. So then for which without them, this sort of transition into the secondary phase can be even less supported, you know, and their time at secondary school can become even harder and harder. And then again, like I just mentioned, leads to that sort of decrease in their well-being and actually can really sort of diminish their chances, I guess, to not to sound all doom and gloom, because we're going to go into the positives of the strategies that we think really work. But yeah, it can really have an everlasting effect as they move on through their education and then further than that on into the workplace. So these again are things that we really feel that can be alleviated with early implementation of support strategies, but also with real solid documentation to support, empower, and really just manage the transition for our students that we're working with. So yeah, hopefully from that you can see that we've really taken into account the literacy challenge that you guys face on a day-to-day basis. We appreciate it's extremely hard. And luckily, like I say, we've got Julia on board. Julia, I'll bring you in now because we're going to dot through a few different sections that we've extracted from the literacy passport. We're not going to go through everything. It's a 36-page document. I mentioned in emails leading up to this that we'll share it with you guys, which we will do. So, you know, you'll have your copy straight away following the event. Along with a recording of this session, so you can use it to your advantage and to support students as you wish. But yeah, we're going to pick out a few bits and Julia's going to sort of walk us through those. So Julia, if I just move on to the next slide, where we're going to look at recording, and you know, we're all recording in the teachers, we're all sort of gathering information about our students. But can you just explain to us a little bit about how we're doing this through the literacy passport, please?
Yeah, of course I can, Quinn. And before I do, I'm just going to back up a little bit, and you might be wondering why I would be creating these resources and why I can see the need for them. So my past has been as a teacher, more than 25 years in the classroom, also as a SENCO and as an advisor. So I have come to Scanning Pens to share my depth of knowledge, which is pretty good. Even if I say so myself, mainly because I have taught in primary and have taught in secondary, acted in both of those sectors as a SENCO, and I have also worked in primary and secondary PRUs, and that has given me a huge insight into what happens when we don't get literacy support right for students. And so my role at Scanning Pens is I have a great belief that the use of assistive technology, particularly the scanning pens, can make fundamental, even life-changing opportunities for students to overcome their difficulties. But this has got to be packaged up the right way for teachers. The support needs to be in your hands in order to implement this strategy and do it successfully with your students, because we all know that if you are trying to bring a literacy strategy, any strategy actually, into the classroom, you have to evidence what you are doing. And evidencing, Quinn, to answer your question, starts with recording your concerns. So this page is one of the first ones in the book that actually goes through what kind of recording teachers should be doing with their students who they feel a concern about. And there are a number of different recording sheets within the passport. For example, there's a recording sheet that allows you to look at an entire class, like we do when we sit back with our bird's eye view and we think, right, who's struggling, who's succeeding, what kind of challenges are these children facing? And we do this all the time as teachers. But there are hints and tips in the book that will allow you to make notes very quickly. So if you're noticing that a group of children, or you're thinking, right, those are my children with dyspraxia, these are the ones who are really not writing, you might not know dyspraxia, but these are the ones who are struggling with their writing, they're struggling with their pencil grip, then you start to think, right, okay, I've got that group of student, perhaps I ought to just record that. Who's really struggling with their writing? Who's really struggling with their reading? Who's the reluctant reader in my classroom that when I say we're going to read around the class will start squirming? So what these forms and pro formers through the book will do is will enable you to tune in to the learning difficulties that the children might be experiencing in front of you. Now, you all might be very aware of this, and most of us are as classroom teachers, and we create accommodations. And as primary school teachers, this is something we do extremely well. We know our students really well. And actually, that's part of the problem. We know them really well, and we find a way to support their needs, and we do it instinctively. But we don't necessarily record what we're doing. We don't necessarily share and record that excellent practice. And I can guarantee, and I know, that when those students then go on to secondary school and have to have an independent learning experience, they're not going to necessarily be benefiting from your expertise, your knowledge of what will make them produce their best, be it the magic pen that does the amazing writing that you know you can make them produce wonderful work with, to the coloured overlay, to the scanning pen tool, whatever it is that you've put in place that has made that child as successful as they can be in your classroom may not be shared. And then this is where the gap opens and opens. It's because that information didn't move. So part of the reason we do this recording is so that your expertise, your valuable knowledge transfers with that student. The recording form that you're looking for here is on page 10, and it's an SPLD literacy information gathering form. SPLD for specific learning difficulties, which is the umbrella of dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD, all of those ones that can create difficulties with reading comprehension. So you're going to look at this form, and you can over time perhaps look at one student who may be concerning you and tick off, okay, on the dyslexia indicators, this person is a high level of concern for this particular one. Perhaps it was sequencing or a processing delay, or maybe it's a moderate difficulty, or maybe it's no difficulty. But what you can do is check off against dyslexia indicators, dyspraxia or DCD indicators, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder difficulties indicators, and then you do it once, and then next term you do it again, and the following term you do it again, and you will build a record of what the profiles are of the children who are concerning you. And for a teacher in the classroom, that is very powerful, because you can then go to your SENCO and have that conversation and say, I have got 6 children in my class who I feel concerned may have a difficulty that needs additional support. And it will also help to fine-tune your teaching pedagogies and techniques as well. So throughout this booklet, as Quin said, 36 pages, I think there are about 5 or 6 different forms for different ways for you to tune in and think about the learning of your students.
Fantastic, thanks, Julia. And I know, I mean, that's a great insight to the recording form, because I know from some of our customers that have already been using the literacy passport over a number of, well, over the last sort of year or two, I know that a number of them have fed back to us that not only has it helped them create these profiles, if you like, and then tailor resources or budgets towards resources that they need, not just for scanning pens, but also for many other things as well. So we've had great feedback in terms of its value, and that is, you know, that's what it's there for, and that's what really makes us sort of get happy about it. The next page we're going to look at is about tracking literacy needs. And we know, again, you know, I'm sure all of you on the call are tracking literacy needs every day. I'm sure you're aware of that, as you know, like you said, with your experience that you've all these different education settings that you've been doing it. So can you just tell us a little bit maybe about how in which the tracking is different using literacy passport and what it includes to kind of really just make that tracking progress a lot easier and maybe a lot more concise for teachers?
Okay. Yes, we do tracking, and when we have a student who has got a difficulty and we are setting up some kind of intervention, we record that intervention. However, we don't necessarily transfer this information or record it all in one place. We just think, we did a good job. We did Ruth Miskin. we did toe by toe, we did, and we tick off the list of things that we did. If we had a student who was very dyslexic, they may not be successful with one particular literacy intervention. That's very often the case. And so you have to change up the intervention that you do with a student. Now, as a practitioner in secondary school, I know that I've had a group of children and thought, right, I've got to raise the reading age of these children. I've got some dyslexic children, potentially I've got to support. I know what I'll do. I'll do Ruth Miskin. I'll do toe by toe. I'll do Alpha to Omega. And I've got a list of my go-to strategies that I would use with my students when I see that learning gap opening. And for the student, the frustration is they might find themselves facing toe by toe for the third time. And if it didn't work the first time, I can guarantee you it won't work the third time round. This is part of the reason why students at secondary school who have literacy difficulties start to become quite challenging in their behaviour. It's because we are repeating the same strategies. Sometimes we're repeating phonics strategies that didn't work at early stages. And so your input at your phase is so crucial, because we don't want to be repeating the same strategies over and over again. So by creating a list of documents or a list of strategies, which are all easy to do through this document, you can create a passport and ensure that your student is not getting a repeated strategy. It also enables you to record things like, particularly, for example, if you are really suspicious that that student has got some dyslexia that needs to be assessed, and many of them do, but you may not have the budget for it, which is unfortunate, but you really, really need to be sharing that information with the secondary school, because if you don't do that, the child continues with an undiagnosed learning difficulty and the gap just gets wider. And we know that life chances for young people who don't have their literacy needs met at that crucial phase, they're not going to go on and achieve what they should achieve. It's an unfair situation for them. So let's get that information recorded and get those students supported in the right way. That's why this is important.
Fantastic. Thanks, Julia. And I know, in terms of ensuring that constant support stays as they transition is key, like we touched on from the literacy challenge. So it's great that the literacy passport echoes that with documents that it's including, looking at the sort of establishing context. I mean, we know that there's documents here in the literacy passport, really valuable documents that are there to really establish context for support. Now, this is there for you to share information. And really, I wanted to ask Julia, why would the guys on the call today, or anyone using the literacy passport, why would they want to use this document for the sharing of the information that they're doing already?
This is the answer the teachers are going to love. Because it's quick, because it's easy, because it's not going to take you too much time. In the centre of the document, and if you're printing it out, you just look for the centre pages. You pull it out as an A3 or you print it off, and you've got a document that will run through your photocopier. You know the trick. Or you can do it as an online document that you can share directly with the next SENCO or the next teacher. So what you've ended up with is 4 pages where you tick, 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 tick what the intervention strategies are. So if that student has, for example, successfully used in your classroom a coloured overlay, tick the box. If you have found that they have used their reader pen successfully for a number of different strategies, like, for example, they constantly use the dictionary definition and that's successful for them, you tick off they use their scanning pen. If they desperately need that audio book alongside of their reading materials, you tick it off. I couldn't make it any easier, really. And so this is why it's good. The next thing on the inside, if you have students using a reader pen, which we know will accelerate their confidence, their well-being and their reading progress, we would really like the next school to know that they are going to need to transition with a reader pen. You are helping to support the secondary school to make their purchasing decisions about whatever assistive technology it might be in their toolbox that they are going to provide to those learners who are coming in with literacy difficulties. And you need to plan in advance, because you need to plan your budget for it. And if you've provided this information and you know that a student will get on much better with a particular piece of kit, a particular app, with a scanning pen, this will help to do that for you. Share that information quickly. There's an opportunity for children to provide their own feedback about the scanning pen on this page as well, about how they feel if they don't have the supports that they have had at primary school, just so that you've got that student voice being shared. So important. And the back page, this goes back to what I was saying before. If you have done particular strategies and you know that that student is likely to go on and need further strategies, just pop them down. Whatever it is that you've done, Hickey, Alpha to Omega, whatever the strategy is, pop it down so that that student doesn't encounter the same strategy twice. You've now provided that context, and a good little strategy freebie that I'm going to give you for primary schools is to make a photographic record of what your student uses. And all you've got to do is get them to put onto their desk all those good things that they use as they're learning. It might be a fiddle toy, it might be a reading line, it might be a pencil grip, it might be Unifix blocks, it might be a scanning pen. But all you need to do to make this very quick is to get your student at the end of the day, put all of their things on the desk, write a name card, and then you just take a photograph. And so all you need to do is send that photograph to the next school, and they will know, without you having to write reams and reams, what the learning tools are for that student that will support them in the next school. Really brilliant little tip for you. Time saver.
Fantastic. I like the way you led into that question, saying it's the one that the teachers will enjoy the answer of, because I know, again, feedback that from schools that are using this and teachers that have been using it, simplicity is key. We understand that everybody's so busy, and so ensuring that you tick all the boxes and make sure the transition support's there and that the support mechanisms are in place is key, but we want to make it as easy and straightforward as possible. So I think it's great that you've been doing that. And also the pupil voice, what's better to hear from the pupils. So it's nice to see that, in all of the resources you and the team have created, Julia, there's always that chance for pupil reflection, really ensuring that they're enjoying the support that they're receiving from the documents. And then we are also now going to look at the intervention support documents. So, this is obviously about ensuring best practice takes place. So can you just tell us a bit about the assess, plan, do, review strategy that it's outlining here, please?
Yes, if you've joined us as a TA, a teaching assistant, or as a SENCO, the ADPR, the assess, plan, do, review process will be very familiar to you, because it's part of the SEN Code of Practice. It is how we go about making our interventions and recording the progress that's made. I'm going to be talking very specifically about scanning pens as an intervention now, because this is part of your implementation support for running an intervention with a reader pen. And all you need to do is tick the boxes, read the list, do the thing. And this is going to save you a lot of time, because when you are implementing a new literacy strategy, you can find yourself thinking around, how am I going to do this? How do I communicate it? Who have I got to communicate it to? How are we going to manage home use? What are the protocols for charging this unit? What are going to be the protocols for if it gets lost? You will have all of these things running around in your head, and I just want to save you from having to do all that thinking. I want you to do really effective interventions with the student. And so all you need to do, for example, if we look at assess, which is the green box, sorry, the yellow box there, the first part of the assess would be meet with the student and talk through their reading progress. Discuss your findings and propose an intervention process, which might be read a pen, but could be something else. Discuss their self-esteem and their confidence for learning. How have they been doing their homework? How have they been getting on with tests? How do they feel about their SATs exams that are coming along? Find out what adaptive or assistive technology has been tried before. This is your learning conversation with that student. blow by blow. You haven't got to do the thinking, you just tick through the list. And this is going to save you a lot of time, be very helpful. The plan section then for a reader pen takes you through those questions of how you go about ensuring that this student knows how to use the pen, that they can use it successfully, that they can got a strategy for using it at home or at school, who's going to supply the headphones, which teachers are going to be informed and how are you going to inform them. It just blow by blow goes through all of those important bits of information that you've got to think through. This is the bit where you will set up someone who might be a peer mentor or the TA who is going to do that support with the student. And this document gives you QR code links directly to videos that will show you how to demonstrate the scanning, how to make it switch from right-handed to left-handed, how to set it up for students so that it suits their learning needs. So this is your entry point into more information on how to teach a student how to use that pen and learn how to be successful with it. And finally, there is a review part, and this is about identifying with that student and with their teachers what progress they have made while using the pen. How is it making them feel? We've got to get this social emotional thinking, because review is not just about academic progress, it's about well-being and preparedness for learning. And one of the things that we find with students who use a reader pen is that it has a profound impact on their self-esteem, because they have become or are becoming a more independent learner, and that is something that is well worth recording.
Superb. And yeah, it's great that you finished on the sort of becoming an independent learner. I think that is the key benefit that anybody receives from not only just scanning pens, but mainly any assistive technology in the classroom. We're giving the independence to students with a vast array of needs. You know, if I think we'd all probably agree, learn by doing, you know, is probably the best way to learn, and the best way things stick, and the best way students move on. So yeah, great insight to that, Julia. And the four-pronged approach is really ensuring that this as a support measure is actually benefiting not only you, but the student and them then moving forward in their learning journey. And then we're going to look at, please, if you don't mind, tell us a bit about the literacy IEP. And you know, we know that this gives a sort of, I guess, solid starting point for SENCOs when they're evidencing, or teachers when you're evidencing. So yeah, really, just can you just tell us a bit about the literacy IEP, really, and where it starts from, what benefit it gives?
So the previous document I would suggest would be very good for teachers and TAs if you are the SENCO or the literacy coordinator and you are now with responsibility for monitoring and showing progress. This is an important part of what you do. I want to be able to give you a similar kind of document that enables you to do that successfully and without having to create the wheel. It's just here for you. And it goes through exactly the same process: assess, plan, do, review. But this time it's got that wider perspective of the array of strategies that you might be providing, the wider range of information that you might have been collecting. So, for example, in assess, it might ask you to request and review all the literacy records for that child and include as your evidence bank information from perhaps occupational therapists, educational psychologists, maybe something that you've collected on visual stress or other screeners that you've done. So this is your way of putting together perhaps a document, a bigger document that might be supporting for an ECNA, an education health care needs assessment document, without which students don't get the financial support or the hours of time or whatever it is that they might really need if their level of need or disability is very impairing. So under the Equalities Act, we want to ensure those students get that support. And yes, it does involve a lengthy process, but this document here called Intent, Implementation, Impact, Reader Pen IEP will do all of those stages of thinking for you if you happen to be the SENCO and you are evidence gathering. And again, you've got to do this. And I've done it myself many times. I know just exactly how much work you have to do to create these documents for students. So with that in mind, I've tried to do this as efficiently as possible for you. So it is just a question of ticking, checking, collating evidence, some of which you will have already developed from the documents that you've pulled out of this passport document.
Fantastic. Thanks, Julia. Thanks so much. And I know that is just a few of the support strategies and pages that we've got within the Literacy Passport, but it's great to hear from you about those. And thank you so much for taking the time to run through some of them today. Cheers.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.